Hello everyone, so I'm here today to do another tag. This one was created by Courtney Ferriter and it's called the Self-Aware Reader tag, and she also tagged me on it, so of course I'm going to do it. So the first question is, what most draws you into a novel or story? What makes you want to keep reading? Plot, characters, writing style, atmosphere, or something else? So I think for me, the thing that I appreciate the most in books is the topics and the social commentary that they might have. Basically the topics. If a topic interests me, then I will keep reading. That doesn't mean that that's the only thing I look for in books, and every time that I read a book that has an interesting topic, I will like the book. But it does mean that it is a necessary component for me to enjoy a book. So if a book only has a plot, or only has good characters, or only has beautiful writing style but doesn't have any interesting topic for me, then I will not be interested in the book. The second question is, what is a convention or trope that will immediately turn you off in your reading experience with a novel or story? I think that for me, I have had the experience a couple of times with this, that often African countries are considered as like, these poor places where people just starve and that's all they are, and they are used as a plot point, and I do not like that. Sometimes I finish those books because they're for projects or whatever, but if I find that in a book and it's just for the sake of it and I'm just reading for reading, I will DNF it, because it makes me mad, because it's very, very damaging for those countries, and I do not think it's a reality either. So yeah, and if you have not seen Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's speech on the danger of a single story, I recommend you do go there, because that explains very well my feelings about this trope. And the other thing that puts me off is when science is used as a plot point as well, because I'm a scientist and I have spent years of my life in a lab doing sometimes very boring work so that science can advance, and I do not like when people use it just because it's a plot point without understanding it or without looking into it in any sort of depth. Yeah, that makes me really mad. There was one example I can think especially made me mad, and that was Solar by Ian McEwan, because this is about professor in photoelectrochemistry, which is exactly what my PhD was about. And it's basically a story of sexual abuse and by this man. And yeah, so that book put me off from Ian McEwan for the rest of my life, because the way that he talked about the science was just basically, he made this professor be a science professor, because normally these stories are about literature professors, and probably he just wanted to be different, so he decided to do this one about photoelectrochemical professor. And I did not spend 4 years of my life, 5 if you count my master, researching about that, so that someone can use random names of photoelectrochemistry in a book without anything else. That makes me mad. If you have not noticed. So yeah, it can be done well, but often it's just used because it's different and edgy, and no, thank you. No. The third question is, what most appeals to you when reading nonfiction and makes you want to keep reading? I think that there are two things in nonfiction that are important for me. I think that one is the writing style. It has to be more than enumeration of facts. And then the other thing is the actual facts need to be interesting to me first, but also correct. If I know that something is not true and it's in a book talks about as if it's true, it just I don't gel with that. So it needs to be well researched, it needs to be correct, and it needs to be interesting, basically. That's not only one thing, but you get me. The fifth question is, would you say you read more for pleasure and enjoyment, or more to learn and exercise your brain? I think that I mainly read to exercise my brain. Occasionally I would pick some fantasy or something that is more for pleasure than anything else, but normally I still in those cases I do need some kind of parallel to the real world in which it makes some kind of social commentary. I think that's also why I'm not a big fan of romance or anything else, because that is what I think most people read for pleasure, and for me it's just boring because I'm not learning anything new. If I want to do that, I will watch a movie instead. I watch movies for pleasure most of the times. The sixth question is, which type of books are you likely to rate more highly and enjoy more overall? Brain candy, pleasure enjoyment, or books, or brain protein, learning exercise books? Definitely protein. As I said, I enjoy them more, so it makes more sense that for me that I will rate them highly. But also, I don't normally give higher ratings. And if you don't know, I don't share my ratings in here in YouTube, because I think that they are very personal, and I know what they mean for me, but they might mean something else for someone else. So I think it's irrelevant for me to share my ratings, but I do have ratings in my own log system, just because it helps me remember, like if I want to look easily at what are my favorite books of the year or whatever, I can do that more easily if I just have a star rating or something that I can find easily. But those ratings do not mean anything to anyone else, because I think that my rating system does not align with most people, so that's why I don't share them. But yeah, that said, I rate 5 stars, which is the highest. I normally rate like maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe no books in a year. So those books have to be brain protein for me, because those are the ones that have made an impact in me. And my rule for giving a book 5 stars is something that it has had such a big impact on me that I have to automatically go back and reread to get all of the things that I didn't get the first time round. So I think that is usually brain protein, right? Question number 7 is, do you have a sense early on whether or not the book you're reading will be a 5-star read or a book you'll really like? Has a book ever surprised you in this regard? I think that yes and yes. Like normally you can feel 50 pages in if a book is like really it's something really impactful for you, or it's just something that you have read before, and also like the writing style tends to not change massively, so you can get a sense of what the book is if it's going to be a book that you would really like. However, I think especially in novels, endings do make a big difference, so I can have a sense of the range but not the exact rating or not the exact level of enjoyment, if that makes sense. And there are books that have surprised me, maybe not a huge amount, but they sometimes surprise me. I remember, for example, when I was reading Your Eyes Were Watching God by Sarah Neil Huston. and that book did surprise me because the first half has a very different tone from the second half, and I thought that the first half was fairly standard, the fairly standard American black novel, if that makes sense. But then the second half went into a completely different direction that I was not expecting, and that was not standard at all. So I did like that much more than I was expecting. But in general, I do get a sense of if I would like a book or not early on. The question 8 is considering books that you have rated 5 stars in the past, or if you don't rate them, books you really loved, do you think you would feel the same way about them now? Why or why not? Depends on how long ago I have read them. Well, I mean, the 5 stars, I have only started rating books maybe 2 years ago, a year ago. So those ones probably I will still enjoy as much. But I also do think that books that impact us depend a lot on when we read them, if we read them at the right time. Because normally for me, something that I would really enjoy or something that I really rate highly is something that surprises me and something that I've never seen before, and something that is completely blows my mind because it's something completely new, and that does not mean that that book is unique in that subgenre or whatever. It's just the first one I read, so the fact that I read it first makes a big difference on how much I would enjoy it, as opposed to if I read it again after I read a bunch of other similar things. So yeah, I do think it does matter. With that said, I have reread some of my favorites, and they are still favorites. And I have my reread project in which I am rereading all of my favorites, and so far I have enjoyed them both equally as much as I did when I read them first. And some of them I read maybe 15 years ago, so yeah, it has been a while, but I still enjoy them as much. So yeah, maybe it doesn't affect me as much as I thought it would, but I think it does have an impact on when you read them. So yeah, those were all of the questions in this tag. Now I just have to tag people. So I'm going to tag Leo from A Little Book Life. I'm going to tag Doris from All the Books, and I'm going to tag Grace from J.K. Reads. And if you want to do this tag, feel free to do it as well, even if I didn't tag you. And yeah, that was all for me. Let me know in the comments what you think of these answers, and if you are the same as me or not. If you have different answers, I would love to know. And until next video, bye!